You know, we hear the word environment thrown around all the time, but what does it actually mean? I bet it's a lot bigger and honestly a lot more personal than you might think. It's not just about trees and oceans somewhere else. It's about everything, and it starts right where you are. So, let's do a quick experiment. Just pause for a second and look around you. Really look. What do you see? Your desk? The walls of your room? Maybe you can see a window, or you're outside. Whatever it is, the air you're breathing, the light in the room, the sounds you hear. That, right there, is your environment. It's not an abstract idea. It's immediate, and it's all around you. And that makes perfect sense when you look at where the word comes from. It's from the old French word environner, and it literally just means to surround. That's it. It's a beautifully simple origin for what we now know is a profoundly complex system. At its core, it's just everything that surrounds us. No, of course, science builds on that simple idea. The modern definition is basically the sum total of everything, living things, non-living things, and all the forces and events that influence any living creature. And that creature could be anything, a tiny bacteria, a massive blue whale, or, well, you. Okay, so if it's the sum total of everything, how do we even begin to wrap our heads around it? Well, scientists start by breaking it down into two huge fundamental categories, the living stuff and the non-living stuff. And here are the official terms for those categories. Abiotic components, which are all the non-living parts, and biotic components, which are all the living organisms. I like to think of it like a play. The abiotic stuff is the stage, and the biotic stuff, well, those are the actors. So, let's look at the stage. The abiotic components are things like the energy pouring down from the sun, the temperature, the water in our rivers and oceans, the very gases in the air we breathe. It's the soil under our feet, the shape of the land, even invisible forces like gravity. These are the physical and chemical conditions that set the scene for life. And on that stage, we have the actors, the biotic components. This is every living thing you can imagine. Plants, which produce the energy, animals, fungi and bacteria that act as decomposers. And look what's right there on the list, human beings. This is so important. We are not separate from this system, looking in. We are an integral biotic part of it. So you've got the stage and the actors, but how do they actually connect? Well, there's a bridge, and it's made of organic compounds. Think about it. Things like carbohydrates and proteins take those non-living abiotic elements, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and assemble them into the literal building blocks of life itself. It's how the non-living becomes living. So we have these fundamental building blocks, but depending on how you put them together, you can create vastly different kinds of worlds. And we're not just talking about forests and fields anymore. We can actually categorize environments into three main types. First, you have the physical environment. That's our abiotic world of land, water, and climate. Then you have the biological environment, our biotic world of plants and animals. But here's the kicker. There's a third type, the cultural environment. And this is everything humans have made. Our cities, our farms, our roads, our technology. And you can see the power of this cultural layer so clearly when you compare an urban environment to a rural one. A city is just dominated by artificial, human-made structures. This drastically changes the whole system, right? It affects everything from pollution levels to the number of plants and animals that can survive there. It's still an environment, just one that we've heavily shaped. You know, this idea of everything being connected is so important that it's actually written into law. Take a look at India's Environment Protection Act from 1986. It doesn't just list water, air, and land. It specifically calls out the interrelationships between all of them and us. It's a legal recognition that you can't separate one piece without affecting the whole. But here's the thing. This massive interconnected system, it's not a static picture. It is constantly changing, constantly in motion. And right now, it's a system that's clearly under a lot of stress. And that's the absolute truth. The environment is always in flux. Seasons change, mountains rise and fall over millions of years. Species come and go. Change is the norm. The problem we're facing today isn't that things are changing. It's the incredible speed and scale of that change, which is throwing the whole system out of balance. And that balance is critical because of this simple, unavoidable fact. Our dependence on the environment is absolute. That word, obligatorily, is so powerful. It means it's not a choice. Every single living thing, from the tiniest virus to the most complex human society, requires the environment to survive. We need it for our food, our water, our air. There is no plan B. So when these incredibly complex systems get disrupted, what happens? Well, we start to see the consequences stack up. These are the big ones you hear about: pollution, climate change, the degradation of our natural spaces, and a devastating loss of biodiversity. They're all symptoms of that system being under stress. And these problems are all tangled together. Just look at pollution. It's not one single thing, it's a cascade effect. The stuff that causes air pollution can create acid rain, which in turn pollutes the soil and the water. Human activities can even create noise and thermal pollution, changing the basic conditions that life needs to thrive. It's all connected. So, once we acknowledge all these challenges, it brings us to the most important question of all. What do we do about it? How do we even begin to manage our relationship with this incredibly complex world that we completely depend on? Well, the first step is always understanding. And because the environment touches on literally everything, from chemistry and biology to economics and sociology, you can't study it from just one angle. It has to be a multidisciplinary approach. You need the biologists talking to the engineers, who are talking to the ethicists, who are talking to the city planners. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. And out of that broad understanding, we've developed some really important frameworks to help guide our actions. We have things like environmental ethics, which helps us decide our values, what's right and wrong, and how we treat nature. We have practical tools like environmental impact assessments to try and predict problems before we even start a project. And the big goal that ties a lot of this together is this idea of sustainable development. So, what is sustainable development? It's actually a pretty simple but really powerful idea. It's about figuring out how to improve our lives today, right now, without wrecking the planet and using up all the resources that future generations are going to need to live their own lives. It's about finding balance. It's about fairness. Which brings us right back to where we started. The most crucial takeaway is this: the environment isn't something out there. It's not a place we go to visit on vacation. Everything we have built, our cities, our economies, our technologies, that's not separate from the environment. It is the environment. It's that cultural layer we've built right on top of the physical and biological worlds. And that leaves us with a final, and I think pretty empowering question. If the environment includes everything we build and everything we do, then its future isn't just something that's going to happen to us. It's something we are actively creating every single day. So the real question isn't what the future of the environment will be, it's how will we choose to shape it?